Okay, so as we fast forward in time with Fender amplifiers, one of the next notable players, first of all, we had Chuck Berry, then we had B.B. King, and then we fast forward to Keith Richards, and then Stevie Ray Vaughan came along in the 70s, and I mean, other people too. Billy Gibbons was a Fender Super Reverb user, and that's what some of the early records were cut with before he was a Marshall user, and so people like that are worth mentioning because they really did state that blasting Super Reverb tone. That was a 410 thing. We're going to be doing a demonstration with a Strat into a Vibrolux. That's a 64 Vibrolux because it too has 10-inch speakers in it. It too does have a tube rectifier that's going to give us that sag and compression and those things that that Stevie relied on. Stevie was a user of a TS-808, so I've got a green box down here turned on with just a little bit of hair on it, just like how Stevie would have used it. If he would have had it on his front pickup situation, then you would have heard him using it more like this. That's how he used hair against his little bit of a drive box to create some hair against his amplifiers. He was a really super loud player that relied on driving his amplifier fully, you know, how we had discussed before. Output, you know, clipping and speaker overdrive. And then also you add some to the front too. So once you get all three of those combinations going, a little bit of push to the front, a little bit of output clipping, and some speaker drive, then he would have used, like, for a known song of him, this would have been kind of a close replication of what he did here. Okay, continuing ahead, we'll pop up into the 80s when Brian Setzer came out and got released. He was playing through a Bassman, still does today. I have a 1963 Bassman back here. And one of the things that you have to understand about getting Brian's tone is you don't necessarily have to own the Bassman to get the tone, albeit it does very much help. He also plays through closed back cabinet. We're not going to do that. We're going to play, I have my Bassman going through the open back speakers of this just to illustrate that you can get the tone without having to own exactly the exact same gear. But a couple of very, very important components to get that tone is I do have my delay turned on, like how he has his Roland Space Echo. And so the thing about a Space Echo is it has a little drive knob on it that you can turn up, and that adds that juice to the front of the amp, like how we discussed in the gain section here on a non-master volume amplifier. We're going to push it so that it gets a little bit of drive to the amp. And if you pay attention to when Brian's up playing and he's singing and he's playing his rhythm parts, he's just doing his thing. But when he gets ready to go do a solo, if the solo deserves that kind of tone, he walks back there, and that's the knob that he's tweaking on that little Roland Space Core Echo back there is the drive thing. So on my T-Rex down here, I too have a level of how loud that I want the whole pedal to be. So I've got it jacked up a little bit so that it's adding some drive into the front of my Bassman. That's a component that would really help in getting his sound just a little bit of grain to the front, using that slapback thing that we talked about in the rockabilly section of the delays, when we talked about that in the delay section. And then the most important thing for Brian Setzer tone or Gretsch players is the Filtertron pickup. There's nothing that replaces it, in my opinion. I don't think anybody else's opinion. There's some great duplicate makers out there like TV Jones. Brian uses TV Jones Filtertron pickups, actually. I have some Filtertrons and a different Gretsch. These are original Filtertrons from 1967. So this recipe here is 67 Gretsch into 63 Fender Bassman, actually going through the original speakers and a Fender Pro through an open back, because we wanted it to sparkle a little bit more, and we just had a 412 here. Brian would be using a 212 Fender cabinet that's actually sealed on the back. So here's a quick little representation of how to get that sound without necessarily having to own all the exact same gear.